joining us on this week's episode of Lawyers on the Rocks. Lawyers on the Rocks are Jeremy Eldridge, me, Kurt Nachman, and Adam Credle. Jeremy Eldridge practices criminal defense. I'm Kurt Nachman. I handle civil litigation, personal injury matters, and Adam Credle does whatever it is that immigration lawyers do. We are Maryland-based lawyers, and this is our show. On this week's episode, we are sampling the sweet, sweet nectar of White Zin Fidel.
White Zin for the win.
White Zin for the win. We have the extremely special guest, Miss Isabel Cumming, the Inspector General for Baltimore City. We have, as a special note on the White Zin,
that you're dressed like a giant bottle of White Zin.
I am like a pink
I've so been trying not to make you look like a big bottle of rosé.
I mean, I am a big bottle of rosé. But didn't you know that was my nickname in college? Big Rosé. Brosé. So we have two White Zins that we're sampling, and my instructions per Jeremy were to buy the most expensive bottle and the least expensive bottle that you can find. And when I very embarrassingly went into the liquor store, they literally laughed me out the door and said,
I didn't mean to do that to you, by the way.
The spread is $8 to $11. Which bottle would you like? We have three.
And that's what makes me a good inspector general. I am very cheap, and I don't want to waste money, even with liquor.
I love that because even in her report, she says it saved every citizen $4, and then there's a bag of Utz potato chips. And I wanted to be like, Isabel, they actually go on sale. It was like 2 for $4.
So, we.
I'm sorry, I just can't. As I'm sniffing for the bouquet of White Zin. I'm really getting my nose up in there.
I've been swirling for a while.
Yeah. How are the legs? Yes. Does it have some deep legs?
It's not really legs. It's more like sediment.
That's jammy. It's very jammy.
Chewy.
The good news is my mother is listening somewhere to this in Williamsburg, Virginia, and she's just loving every minute of it because this is her jammy jam too. So
Shantae's mom too. That's why we can only be moderately offensive towards White Zin.
I love White Zin.
You know what's going to happen? You know who's going to come after us? Big Zin. Like Big Tobacco.
What's
Big Zin's going to come after us
Zin's
after
gonna
this.
Cancel us?
Yeah, they're going to ruin our podcast. Oh, 100%. Like, you don't ever talk about my
wine. I love that
wine.
label. I love the barefoot label.
I think they pretty much have the market cornered.
So I've tried both of them, and I'm just going to do the drink review to warm us up a little bit. Can't tell the difference. Like, literally can't tell the difference. And I'm not sure if it's because the first glass burned my palate or...
Oh, they're completely different.
Totally.
Yeah, totally different.
You want me to say something?
It's almost like the top of your shirt versus your pants.
So pink versus red.
Mm-hmm.
You're...
What do you think, Adam?
I think my microphone's off.
It's about time we silence the white man. You know what it is? It's between the army jacket and your White Zin. You've been silent. You've been canceled.
Yeah, I feel like I've been canceled this episode.
I've never seen a Vietnam War veteran drink White Zin.
All right, so Isabel, as an inspector general, have you been able to inspect the two wines that we have, and can you tell me the difference?
I do think they taste differently. I don't know which one's more expensive.
Okay. The answer is they're the same price.
Oh, I was right.
But do you know which one is Sutter Home and which one is Barefoot?
Okay, I will say the one in the fancy glass is Sutter Home, and the clear glass is Barefoot.
She's clearly an excellent inspector general. She got the answer right.
Yay.
Because the slightly more reddish one was the Barefoot. I think it's a little sweeter, right?
Yeah.
The Barefoot one with the reddish one was a little sweeter.
I think this maybe with like a big cube.
Big cube?
Yeah.
Maybe two
Soften it up
cubes.
a little bit.
2 cubes.
Educated ice right there.
So, Isabel, you have a 40-year career that has sort of spanned the gamut of sort of white-collar criminal prosecution and administrative prosecution and inspectors general. I guess my first question for the listeners that don't know, and we have a wide variety in our audience of lawyers and judges and laypersons. What is an inspector general for those that don't know, or what does that mean? Because we hear that in the media a lot, but like a lot of people don't know exactly what that means.
Sure. An inspector general's job is to basically ferret out waste, fraud, and abuse within government. And in most productive offices, a lot of the complaints and everything you get is from the public, because the public knows what's going on. They just don't know who to turn to. And many times that is our office. So we are, thank God, in Baltimore City, we are independent. So I do not work for the mayor. I work for an independent advisory board of citizens that the citizens of Baltimore made happen 2 years ago. And otherwise, my advisory board would currently be the mayor, the council president, the solicitor, the comptroller, and a council person.
That doesn't sound very independent.
Well, through the years, because I've actually been doing this, I'm coming up on my over 6 years, the positions have been investigated by my office, every one of them.
So, in other words, every person that you were tasked with overseeing has been investigated by your office.
Well,
The individuals overseeing her would have been.
Well, actually, in Baltimore, we have been through, as you probably know, 5 commissioners, 3 mayors, 2 council presidents, 3 solicitors in my time. So, I mean, no, it didn't have to be those particular people, but the positions through the years, since we've had quite the turnover. But there's only been 1 inspector general during that time.
And that's you.
And that is me.
I think that says a lot about the job you're doing.
So,
Or my survival instincts, I don't know. And actually, my survival bases on the public, because it's the public that ends up, I work for them, and they have come to our rescue many times. That changing my advisory board, the public of Baltimore, 89% voted for that. So knowing for elected officials, you know this person has 89% behind them.
Did the other 11% not read the question?
Probably not. Or they just wanted to say no.
The other 11% was the city council president.
Who voted 4 times each.
well, so I wanted to ask you that. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, because I did want to ask you kind of how you landed in your current job, but then also how your independence came out, because there is kind of a story behind that about perhaps some of the people who were or are mayors and council presidents that you may have been investigating at the time, and they tried to kind of stop that bill from happening. And can you just talk a little bit about kind of how you came to this current position, and then how your true independence came to be?
Absolutely. I was actually turned down to be the inspector general. I applied back in 2000, probably about 2015 or 16. I was head of investigations at the time for WMATA, which is the whole metro system in Washington, D.C. And I wanted to come back home. Baltimore is my home. And so I applied, but I didn't get it. I was the runner-up. So when the job came open again, because of a situation that happened to that inspector general, and just so the public realizes, I am the 5th inspector general in Baltimore City. All the previous were males. I'm the first female. I'm the first Hispanic. The first inspector general was actually fired by the mayor. And actually, several of them were fired by the mayor, because what we do doesn't always make people happy. And so sometimes the way to stop an investigation is to just get rid of the inspector general. So it is indeed.
That is actually something we're going to come back to
Okay.
after you go through your background, because obviously Kelly Madigan being the Inspector General of Baltimore County, the 2 of you have been through your trials and tribulations. So save that, because that's something that we want to address specifically.
I'm glad. So I was hired by Mayor Catherine Pugh. And the person that was recruiting at the time was Judge Andre Davis, who I have the utmost respect for. I mean, who gives up a federal circuit judgeship?
Lifetime appointment.
Because he believes that much in our city. I mean, so I originally, when they called me up at WMATA, I originally said no. But when Andre Davis called me up, I had to go because I really wanted to meet him too. And so I ended up meeting Catherine Pugh, and as just typical Baltimore irony, I remember during our interview, she was just so happy because she had just got this new house and she was fixing it up. And that ended up coming back to the story when she ended
to haunt her.
Yep. And that's what happens to Baltimore. And one of the inspector generals that I very much admired was a guy named David McClintock. And he was probably one of the most effective inspector generals, and he only lasted 18 months.
I worked with him when I was a white-collar prosecutor in the city.
What did you think?
The cases were put together when they came to me, so I that's what I'm always looking for.
Exactly. And he's just a good guy. So
he was a good guy.
Yeah, and he knew that they weren't going to make the office independent. So he actually left and became the Inspector General of St. John's Parish in New Orleans. Now, when New Orleans is doing a better job than us, that's not so good. So he ended up doing that, and then another Inspector General came in.
Did we trade him for Commissioner Harrison plus draft picks or something? Because the timing on that is pretty much the same. Yeah, I love how Baltimore does business.
They're like, I'll give you a police commissioner and a running back for one IG.
Damn, New Orleans won again.
Well, he left because he wasn't independent. So I knew coming in that independence was very important. And when I met with Catherine Pugh, she also told me that there was a bill that was put forth by Ryan Dorsey to make the office independent. And everybody I talked to, so I just mentally assumed that our office was independent, and that's the way I was doing my job. And I did one investigation about Work Baltimore, and the Daily Record, I believe, called it the word kerfunkel was actually in a kerfunkel. The Inspector General finds a kerfunkel. Well, that did not make the mayor happy, so she had a press conference against me. But shortly thereafter started the whole Healthy Holly thing, and then around the exact same time came the vote to make that independent.
Just so you know, our podcast auctioned off for charity a Healthy Holly book and gave the money to the Maryland Food Bank a couple years ago. Listener Peter Sue,
that's outstanding.
$250 that he paid for the Healthy Holly Eat More VegTales.
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 Yes, VegTales. Yes, I went through the bowels of Baltimore City with the FBI looking for those books when we did the search warrant in Baltimore. Yeah. Actually, there's only been two search warrants in Baltimore City, of City Hall, and 30 years apart, was on both. One was Jackie McLean, and one was Catherine Pugh.
This is a good trivia question. I mean, you would be great for Baltimore trivia.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I like to say that I'm like the Forrest Gump because I was always there, but no one saw me. And I mean, I remember shaking hands.
That was such a weird metaphor to use.
But Forrest Gump. But
it's right. I understand it.
Yeah, because I mean, like with the Jackie McLean case, it was Christina Gutierrez, Billy Murphy. I was there. I had just graduated from law school, and Mr. Montanarelli, who was the state prosecutor, he put me on the case. I'm there. It was the biggest case at the time, and we had unbelievable things happening. And it was Judge Kaplan was the chief judge at the time, and all the council members, 6 of them, came and met with the judge during the trial because trying to get it recused and stopped. And they all shook my hand as they all walked in to do the judge's thing, and I'm like, wow, this is so cool, council people. And the next day, Baltimore Sun has a big story about how and half the council people whose hand I shook said they weren't there, and I'm like, what do you mean they said they weren't there? They were there. How could they lie? I was young.
You shut me up with that one. How could council people lie? Also, conveniently, the title of Catherine Pugh's next kid's book.
And why is the sky blue?
Exactly.
So then that first independence bill passed by 81%. So then we continued on, and my advisory board actually never met. Never met. And then when I was asked to do a big case, that's the first time that suddenly my advisory board had to meet, when people realized who was on my advisory board. And that's when I actually came out swinging with that one and said that you're all conflicted. You all should, this is the wrong advisory board. It's not best practices. The city of Baltimore should be the gold standard. We need to change this.
So you came on my radio show shortly before the bill was voted on. And I guess I'm kind of curious, you know, and I don't want to make an assumption that you and Kelly Madigan were kind of working in tandem, but both of you have definitely experienced the same issues with your fighting to be independent and then having to deal with your respective city and county councils. And Kelly's was also public. Do you think that the pressure that you began mounting publicly and informing the public of what best practices were for your position nationally? Because I remember on my show you came and talked about how the national body of inspectors general had these best practices, and this is just something that you were following. It wasn't something that Isabel Cumming was making up.
No.
Do you think that pressure mounting, you know, not only helped you but helped Kelly, and then when Kelly's stuff became more public, that was kind of what helped get to that 89%? Because it was an overwhelming vote.
Yes.
I mean, it was sort of a mandate from the public saying this is what we want.
That's true. The Association of Inspector Generals, I'm the first vice president of it. So that group is the group that oversees the peer reviews, that oversees and makes those standards. So, you know, I've been in the Inspector General world for about 12 years, and that was just part of what I was used to, and that's what I intended when I was hired by Catherine Pugh to bring to Baltimore. And Kelly didn't. She started basically, you know, all by herself. When I started, believe it or not, we only had 5 employees with the Baltimore City Inspector General because there were so many vacancies. Right now we have 18.
And Kelly Madigan started with her and 2? I think it was 2,
it was
1.
her and 1. And she had to hire the one. I mean, she started. So, I mean, Kelly and I, we worked together actually on the Catherine Pugh case. And at that time she was, because it was actually kind of an interesting picture, because for whatever reason, Associated Press kept using the picture of Rob Herr, and I was standing behind Rob Herr. And so when Rob Herr decided to investigate Biden, everybody thought I was on the Biden case. And I'm like,
Rob Herr, the former U.S. attorney.
Right.
Exactly.
And so there was a picture of all of us.
Thank you, Associated Press photographers.
Oh, I know.
You're not on the Hunter Biden case.
I'm not.
It's Leo Wise who's on the Hunter Biden case.
But this was when Robert Herr was selected to do the investigation.
Exactly.
It all comes back to Baltimore.
Isabel actually figured out whose bag of cocaine it was at the White House.
I can't discuss that.
That's the main reason we brought you here. That, and then we wanted you to tell what it was like to have to work with Ivan, but we can save that for later.
Yes. So where was I? You guys just throw me off. So
we're not called Lawyers on the Rocks because we can stay on topic.
No, we cannot. No, we cannot.
We're defense attorneys. We distract you with magic. So you were talking about Kelly had 1 employee.
So
she had to hire, and
right.
both of you were essentially building these offices. You started with 5. She started with
right.
1, and you know.
And I gave her everything, you know, from my office. I sent over so that, and you know, being part of the association, you know, we wanted her office to be, you know, built the best it could be with best practices. I actually went down and testified in Atlanta, and they considered Baltimore one of the best. You know, it was funny. They followed everything we had in Baltimore with the exception of our advisory board, which they thought was horrible, which, of course, thanks to the citizens, it has been changed. But that just showed you that, you know, we had the right mechanism, but our advisory board was dead wrong. So, so then, you know.
The problem that you ran into, and I'm just curious how common it was, when you were meeting with other inspector generals as part of the association, historically, was it very common to have the politicians overseeing it, and then the trend has been taking that power away from them? Was that the idea, to create the body but then control it? So we only want you really investigating overtime fraud at DPW because it doesn't affect politics. knowing that we can just put our thumb on you. And then now that people are more aware in social media and paying attention, or people like you have the courage to stand up, that now that we're seeing the trend towards a public, like a citizens advisory board.
It's much more now towards the Citizens Advisory Board. In fact, when I did my fight, we took the top 25 city inspector generals, and there was only one. It was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, that even had an elected official on their advisory boards.
Always Albuquerque, Adam.
I tell you, I had every one of them was either elected or appointed. I mean, so we were far from the best standard on that one, and that. I mean, we were so far from the correct way to do it that I think the citizens, it really was a no-brainer. And because of a situation that I was placed in, of a case that I had done, where it turned out that, someone's husband was actually on my advisory board, and, it became pretty obvious that this.
Can you talk a little bit about your current advisory board? How there's some pretty heavy hitters on there. I saw the deans of both law schools in town,
Right.
As well as some other folks.
The rest of the folks are just citizens from Baltimore.
Okay.
They applied, and when they applied, someone applied from all the districts, okay, and then they were selected, and then from that point, their names were put in a hat, and they were selected by the head of the ethics board. So those are actually just citizens from Baltimore. And then that makes up 7. And then 2 of them have special. One of them is a certified public accountant, and one of them is a certified fraud examiner. And then we have the 2 deans. So I think we have an incredible board.
The 2 deans were chosen using the Socratic method, Adam.
So can you talk about, so you are, in addition to being the Inspector General, you're also a CFE. Can you just explain what a CFE is?
Of course. I am a certified fraud examiner, and that's a group of 100,000 people. I've actually been with that group since it actually started, pretty much. That is just, at that time, it was in like the 1990s, you either became an auditor or you went to law school. And they wanted to make this group that actually trained people how to investigate fraud. And it was so needed, because at that time we had just come out with the Treadway report, which was about banking and how we needed more oversight on banking. And I actually started out as an accountant. I worked for KPMG, and then I worked for American National Bank at Lexington and Liberty, where I was the head of compliance and audit. And I would meet these lawyers who the idea of a checking account would just freak them out, and they're supposed to do a white-collar crime, and I'm like, do I need to lay this out to you? And it's a very simple
Yes,
case.
actually, you do.
See? So, to me, since that was my background in accounting and everything, white-collar crime was just, it's very difficult to lose, because, when the money ends up in your personal bank account and you're buying things on there, it's not a difficult case. So, I never thought that I was a great prosecutor or anything. I just could put together very complicated cases and then just explain it on the 7th grade level. And so I would win.
Is 100,000 people as fraud examiners enough for all of the fraud that occurs?
No. Hell no. No, that's how many have actually taken the test to become certified. Now it's actually, there's lots of investigators with different banks and not everybody becomes a CFA. Oh, it's like CPA. There's only the people that take the exam. But and so the CFE, I think that was actually a major game changer in my life. Combining that with my law degree, I ended up becoming the first CFE of Maryland, first person to win the Fraud Examiner of the Year award in Maryland, and then I ended up winning the Fraud Examiner of the World in 2007, because we started a mortgage fraud investigation unit, and first one prosecution, because I don't know if you realize that at that point I was in Prince George's County. Prince George's County was 5th in the United States of America for mortgage fraud. Yep, mortgage fraud was my life.
So I'm not sure if this is an okay question to ask, but does that mean that is a direct line to what happened with Marilyn Mosby? Was that mortgage fraud?
She wasn't.
No?
She
All right.
was convicted of mortgage fraud.
We'll get there. That's later. That's later in the show.
We're not
notes.
there yet.
So, you go to accounting, or you graduate with a degree in accounting from
James Madison.
JMU, and you don't become an accountant.
Well, I did become an accountant. I worked for the largest accounting firm in the world. It was
She wanted more school, Kurt.
KPMG.
More school.
I did enjoy school, and I didn't really love like financial. I didn't really like I loved finding fraud, and it was lucky that it was during the savings and loan crisis, so I was able to do the fun stuff. But
I've never seen anyone so excited about the SNL in the 90s.
I love that, but I didn't love the financial statements and I just didn't love that. And there were people there that truly loved that. So I decided that I have to go back to my original dream in life, which was to go to law school. But before I did, I got my MBA because I worked at a bank. And then I found compliance, and I loved that too. And there, this thing about fighting for my independence, I remember I was only 25 maybe, and I read that the head of compliance and audit should not be reporting to the president. So I took on the president back then even and tried to, and actually won, and removed my position to the board of directors at the age of 20. I looked back, I'm like, God.
At 25?
At 25. Oh, my God. It's embarrassing.
You know that phrase full of piss and vinegar?
That would be me. And actually,
I'm the same way. You know my wife. I mean, I'm not. Kurt and I got in our fair share of trouble as prosecutors running our ideas up the flagpole. We never won any of them, though. That shows
We won a few.
well,
we won a few. She's got a couple more degrees than we do.
I knew enough to talk to the other people, and I learned that, so I went to the board and I said, it's supposed to be this way. And then when you tell everybody that first, then you let the president know that you're going to, that you were going to put it. Did you think he should make a motion I should report to them? And then by that time, other people had told him that they thought that was a really good idea. Sometimes timing is everything. Yeah.
Got to spoon feed people.
So speaking of timing, you end up going to law school at University of Baltimore.
Yay.
And then you intern in the U.S. Attorney's Office here, and you actually, I think the story that you were alluding to before we jumped on may have happened at your time at the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Maryland, when you were in the elevator with... No, that
was the Maryland State Prosecutors. That was Mr. Montanarelli.
OSP.
Okay.
But wait, let me go back to that, because boy, you made that sound easy. Law school was actually at night while working full time. And I tried 3 times to get into the U.S. Attorney's Office. I did not realize at the time that they didn't hire at that time. It's a lot different now, because my friend Andy White says, from after you, Isabel, we made Isabel hires, because they didn't tend to hire from the University of Baltimore.
We know.
We know.
You had to come in as a Sousa.
Yes. Well, mind you, at that time I was a vice president of the bank. I was, I wanted to work at the U.S. Attorney's Office because my mom is from San Juan, my dad is from Saskatchewan. I didn't know a single attorney in my life, okay? I really did not, but it was my dream. So I was trying to get a free internship at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I applied 3 times. Finally, my fourth year, because I did it in 3.5 years. My 3rd time applying, there was a big savings and loan case. The Billman case. Billman absconded to Switzerland, where they found him. But he was brought back, and the person that was hiring said, remember that older lady that keeps applying who's in banking? Maybe she'd be good for this case.
Was the Billman the tax fraud? Like Mark Rich?
He ran a savings and loan.
Yeah.
And he went over there, and we ended up coming back. It was Joyce McDonald and Barbara Sale. And Barbara Sale was the hiring person at the time. And so I was hired for free at the U.S. Attorney's Office. I left my at that time pretty well-paying job to work for free, and I had saved a bunch of money so that I every day would take the bus and every day would bring my lunch and everything. And
Man,
but
you were made to be IG. You were made for this.
and it was me and 5 guys, and there was 5 guys that got hired that summer, and they all went to the more exclusive schools, like Vanderbilt, NYU, fancy schools. But by the end of the summer, I had my own office. I was going out with the FBI, and they were like, "What the heck?" And then the U.S. Attorney's Office let me stay, and they let me stay there at in my own little office for free. And then came the Jackie McLean case, and that's when I applied to work to the state prosecutor's office. So any pay would have been great because I was going from zero.
Who was running OSP at that point?
It was Steve Montanarelli.
Okay.
He was just an incredible man. I have just the utmost respect for him. And when I got hired, I went to him and I said, "Why did you hire me? I'm just out of law school." And he said, "I hired you because I knew every one of your references." And that is something I tell students nowadays, how important it is to, even doing the free internship. It's not the money. It's learning from people that everybody knew more than me.
I'm gonna make you feel old because we feel old. It doesn't exist anymore. Kurt and I both did. I did free internships for 3 judges. Kurt did free internships. I paid for my parking. I paid for my lunch.
Me too.
My dad helped me I lived at home. I gave me gas money. We both did that. We didn't get paid for any of that. Our first paying jobs in the legal field were as law clerks at the Office of the State's Attorney for Baltimore City. The kids that we have coming in now, and we've had some great law clerks, but they expect 17 to 22 an hour, parking and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the days of the free, and our goal was to your point. Half the reason that we both got our first job was the resume we had coming in, because I had worked for 3 judges for free, and just for an opportunity to get a paid law clerk position. But that world, somewhere from the time that we left the state's attorney's office.
Maybe your reputation isn't quite the same as mine, since I'm still doing it, and I have actually resumes out the door on people that wanted to do the free internship.
Then you are lucky that have that, because we've been through 4. I mean, we have 2 law clerks now. We always have 2 to 3. But most we want to pay them. It's not. It's because they should have paid us.
I can't pay them because I don't have.
And no offense, that is a problem. Because that is something that they should give you. All of these law students. That is one problem I did have with it, is that we all should have been paid for that time. And so when you're talking about getting the U.S. Attorney's Office, we all wear it like a badge, and we're like, oh, we did all this free labor and we did it. But in reality, no different than some of the student loan stuff that we're dealing with now, and changing our perspective. We should be helping out young people and making sure that we can pay them for the work that they're doing.
Well, and I think there's a difference too between an unpaid internship for like a government agency or a nonprofit versus a highly
for-profit law firm.
Like if we did it, it'd probably be criminal.
No, I
agree with that.
100%. But it was a badge of honor that we all wore. No, but it was a badge of honor we all wore for years of going, oh, I work for free and I drove an hour a day. Like we all did that, and then somewhere along the line, a lot of kids didn't want to do that anymore because they just don't see the value. It actually warms my heart that you are saying that you still have that, because it means that kids still see the importance in doing something good and seeing the opportunity as more valuable than the money.
I mean, this
no
is
shit, Sherlock.
I mean, if I had, these are very fancy offices. I mean, this is really nice.
We're not the government. You're not investigating us. There's no fraud and waste.
Know, I'm just a little.
No, there's lots of fraud and waste. It's just our fraud. And
just
waste.
remember,
you're owning your fraud.
You are friends with my wife and you like me, okay? And my wife won't visit me in jail, so you can. Just put some money on my commissary, okay?
It's never about liking. It's all about doing your job. I made you choke on that one, didn't I?
She's one of the few people that scares me out. You know that, right?
So, from OSP, you work on this big, high-profile case, and who was the person that you walked in and were prosecuting, or who did you end up prosecuting at OSP, Office of State Prosecutor?
The big cases we did?
Any sort of notable cases that you worked on?
What year time period are you there? Just before you say the cases.
1993 to 2000.
Okay.
So it was Jackie McLean.
Yep.
It was the gubernatorial election between Ellen Sauerbrey and Paris Glendenning that was decided by 6,993 votes. It was Senator Larry Young. It was...
Which is the Billy Murphy case. Billy represented him, right?
Greg, right?
Greg Bernstein.
Greg represented.
Oh,
Greg-
Larry.
Greg-
I'm sorry,
Greg
Greg had Larry. I'm sorry. I don't know why I
Billy
said
represented. Well, Billy represented Jackie McLean for a day, till the next day when we all stayed there till 10 o'clock at night with Judge Bothy. The next day, Christina says that Billy Murphy is not the attorney of record. We had to redo everything all over again. I had never seen anything like that. And that was the same day that all those politicians came and tried to, it was, and then at the end of that week, she actually attempted suicide and ended
Christina Gutierrez?
No, Jackie McLean, and ended up in Shepard Pratt. And Jane Miller did the famous interview at Shepard Pratt with Jackie McLean.
Oh, I never saw that.
Yeah.
That's a great way to get a postponement. Why have we never thought of that? Are we allowed to say all these things?
No. It's usually my job to sound crazy. You're helping out.
But you told me. We also did. I did several people that voted twice. That's why I thought it was so funny when people said, "Oh, people don't vote." Like, I prosecuted people for voting twice.
Chuck Howard, who came on, also said the same, that he is prosecuted, and he prided himself on that. I think 2 were Irish.
2 were Irish.
2 were Irish, and one was a Canadian.
I had one that came in once as oh no, I prosecuted people that voted twice on the same day. One was an election judge who decided that.
Oh, not non-citizens. You got double voters.
No, I got voters that voted twice.
Oh, that's
Hey,
awesome.
if you're
Yeah, and
not
then we
voting
had
twice, you're not trying hard enough.
Right. One decided to come in as once a man and one come on once as a woman.
You can't ask, Isabel.
Oh, I got some unbelievable cases. Oh, Judge Monahan. He had a prostitute come to his office, and that was fascinating. And since I was the only woman in the office, and the wives want to let the husbands, and I got to become friends with the prostitute. Yeah, very nice girl. Yeah. So anyway, she was really proud that she got to be dressed up to go to the judge's office, and she said, "I wore the outfit," and yeah, that was
Wait, hold on.
There, or was she summoned there?
She had to do work there.
First of all, summons are for criminal defendants. You subpoena.
Well, I didn't know if someone was trying to
No.
I know. I'm messing with you.
She was a call girl, so she wanted her.
That's a phrase we don't use anymore.
Oh darn.
No, that's a good one. I'm just saying it's
Okay.
not a phrase.
But when you say she got dressed up, does that mean she was dressed professionally like a juror, or she was like
dressed like a lawyer, as she told me.
I
So
respect that.
what is the definition of that in the mind of a escort?
Okay, this is 1993. Nobody wore anything other than power suits.
I wish we
We
could go
wore
back to that.
nylon stockings. We wore
Don't
high
wish we-
heels, and we carried a briefcase. And that's what every one of us looked like.
Double-breasted suits.
You got it. No, it was it was a uniform, and you just So she was So that case was fascinating. Let's see. We
were actually going to ask you to wear a power suit today.
I'm sure I have one in the very back of my closet. Just
Double-breasted, lots of buttons. Big shoulder pads.
Just tan. The shoulder pads were so important.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have to look like a Panamanian dictator. That's what
I'm pretty sure you have. Don't you actually have a Panamanian dictator outfit in your closet
I will say I may have
with like awards and the mortar boards on
just
the shoulders?
because I'm the height of a Panamanian dictator, and the size of one doesn't mean anything more than that.
That would be a good answer for Napoleon.
What? Someone here does have a complex.
So after OSP is obviously like lots of sort of interesting, fun, high-profile cases, and then some other interesting, fun cases that no one hears about in the media. Mm-hmm. As Jeremy alluded to, we had Chuck Howard on the show a couple months ago. Where do you go from OSP?
Well, the problem with OSP was I hadn't done a lot of jury trials because, and Mr. Montanarelli was always like, I feel like I've let you down because you haven't done, even though I've done huge cases, I haven't done jury trials. So he said, the best thing for your career would be to go to Baltimore City. Because Mr. Montanarelli was...
Because you're a glutton for punishment.
I got it. No, that was the place. It was the best place to work as a prosecutor.
You don't have to tell us.
Okay. I was just, hoping that I could get in, but I was hired directly into the economic crimes unit, and that was just so.
Who was it?
It was Elizabeth Ritter.
Okay, Liz Ritter, but the state attorney at that point is Jessamy.
Oh, it's Pat Jessamy.
Okay,
Pat Jessamy. She was a phenomenal.
I remember Liz Ritter too. She was pretty great too.
Yeah, and they so we did some phenomenal cases there. I mean, we did some cases that had really never been done before. I took on had some really good really good detectives from the check and fraud unit, and we took on the gypsies. I actually won the gypsy case. There was a big case that these people were going to actually cold calling people, and when an elderly voice would pick up, they would tell them that, and this was back, I guess, about 2001 and 2002, would tell them that your BG, and it was the dead of winter, your BG&E is going to be cut off. We're going to send somebody over there to pick up the money.
And how many times does that have to happen for it to get to you?
I had about 20 victims in that one. Yeah, that was Judge Gordy, who was a great judge. That was a great case. I had the oncology department at Johns Hopkins University.
As a
victim.
Yeah,
the secretary decided she should make what doctors make, so she embezzled close to $200,000.
What was her boat called?
No,
Tropic of
Cancer. It was actually her hair, fingernails, and clothes.
That's a lot of hair, fingernails, and clothes.
There can never be enough clothes, just to put that out there.
I do remember the rims on her car were like close to like $12,000 back then.
Well, so it's amazing too, because I was for about a year before I left the office, I was in economic crimes and I worked under Casey.
Oh, Casey's great.
And it was fascinating to me because you'd have these cases, first of all, that you would think shouldn't really be district court cases, but you'd have $10,000-$20,000 cases in district court, right? That would get charged by a district detective or a citizen complaint.
They would go to the commissioner's office.
Yeah,
sometimes.
they would go to the commissioner's office. And so, like, as a line ASA in little district court, I get these cases and I'm going, man, I need some help here. And economic crimes, really, you're looking for like maybe not $100,000, but you're looking for a fairly significant economic loss. And then the U.S. Attorney's Office at the other level, I mean, if it's not seven figures, they weren't really in, or very high profile. Mm-hmm. You're shaking your head yes for the folks that are listening.
That's weird because really everyone wanted my $85,000 Hooters case.
That would you had an 85.
It was so funny. I was like, it's an $85,000 loss from a restaurant in the harbor, and they're like, yeah. I was like, and it's Hooters. I'm really interested. You should send that one down. And then all of a sudden, it got a ton of attention, Kurt. I can't imagine why.
But and what was tragic was I had a case involving, I had a couple of different cases that were sort of noteworthy. The one that sticks out in my mind as being particularly horrific in terms of a low dollar loss was a company in Baltimore was selling prepaid casket truss. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I would have done that one in a heartbeat.
And there was a 1 year statute of limitations on it because it was a misdemeanor. So and I couldn't get them on anything else. The company ended up being insolvent. They took 20 people for, I don't know, a couple $1,000 a piece. But it was like sweet little old ladies, and they're like, "Where's the money?" And the money was gone because the company was insolvent. But there was a 1 year statute of limitations. And a 6 month.
They couldn't do a continuing theft scam. They couldn't do anything.
Can I just tell you that crime is the most Baltimore City shit I've ever heard.
It was just
prepaid
horrible.
Casket. It's like in a city with 350 murders, we also scammed 20 elderly women for prepaid casket
trusts. They were the nicest
trusts.
people in the entire universe, and they just didn't want to burden their families with like the expense or the cost.
That's exactly what they do.
And they gave them their money, and then the company kind of went bust. I'm 100% sure they spent it on things they shouldn't have, and they didn't keep it in the right spots. And it,
Well, my gypsy case, I'll tell you, what they would do is they would go to South Baltimore, it was in Pigtown, and they would go to the older people and they tell them that they were going to fix their roofs. And I remember myself and my detective at the time, John Gipe, we actually went up to the roof. I darn well went to the roof. Nothing was done. There's cigarette butts. There was nothing. And I said, and that victim, I'll never forget her. She had bobby pins in her hair, and all her furniture was covered with plastic. And she was just the kindest, sweetest, and that was all her money. And I won that case. I mean, I remember going to Miss Jessamy and asking her, we need an elder abuse fraud unit, because it's just that always the elderly will get my. They're the ones that will answer the phone. They are the ones that will believe. I give so many speeches.
Yeah, you get those phone calls, right? That say, "Pay us $500, or your nephew has a warrant, and we're gonna arrest him." And
then what did he say? The automator said, "Do you mean John? Yes, John's here. John's calling for you." And they don't even realize.
When you do that kind of work, like I'm sure Kathy Schuster Pascal at the AG's office, you have people where, because of the type of cases you're prosecuting, now she's a Medicaid fraud, but she's done elder abuse. I know you know her, and she's amazing. But people where you're running into the truest of victims, right? And you have other types of cases, and I don't want to go into sex offenses and other types of cases where they can often be complicated by people's histories and stuff like that. But when you get into these elder abuse cases, you have victims who are of the utmost credibility. There's nothing impeachable. And they were just pure victims and by predators.
It's horrible. I had a case.
And I think the predators, they are often worse than other people we run into who are maybe, and I shouldn't say predators by circumstance, but you do have situations where you know what I mean.
They're sociopaths.
Exactly.
And one of the cases I'll never forget, I did in Prince George's County. The defendant's name was Lamondes Williams, and I had 80 victims. And Glenn Ivey, because what he did is he was a very charming person, as most con artists are. He would tell people that they could get into his program, and I'm going to put you in a great apartment, and you just pay me $800, and I'm going to put you in this apartment that really costs $2,000 some dollars. And I had 80 people that he would go every month and take their money, and they'd give them a receipt. And they all had their receipts. But what he did was he was renting them all. And so then the people would be evicted. And they would just come home one day, and everything was out. Everything was out. Families lost everything. And I remember Glenn Ivey said, "Isabel, you are never going to get 80 people." I go, "Sir, they took their homes. You took their life savings, and they wanted better." I go, "I will have 8," and I did. I had 80 people come to trial. And one gentleman, actually, I'll never forget him, Mr. Cervantes, he actually showed the judge his teeth that he had to pull because he couldn't go to the dentist, and he was 70 years old. So the picture in the Washington Post, that was the man holding.
How much time did he get?
Well, that's the sad. Actually, I prosecuted him.
Doesn't sound funny.
No, well, that's a story, as always.
We're going to have to do 8 episodes for it. Can we just read it? Isabel Podcast.
He got, actually, it was one of the largest. It was the largest white collar crime. He got 10 years to spend all. 10 years to spend all. No, he got 10 years, but he ended up, because it was white collar, doing 5. He gets out. He then goes to Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Anne Arundel, doing the exact same thing, bigger fraud with vehicles.
He's like, "I'm going to fix it this time."
Well, actually,
I know how to do it better.
A great prosecutor named Paul Budlow took
Hell
it
yeah.
federally.
Yeah, U.S. attorneys.
On the witness stand.
Paul's gotten 2 of my guys recently.
Paul's awesome. And on the witness stand, Lamondes said...
Did you work with Paul at the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office?
No, I was already in Prince George's by then.
Gotcha.
But he's a great prosecutor. And when Paul crossed, he said, "Well, why is it that you, on this latest fraud, you didn't go to Prince George's County anymore?" And he said, "Well, there was this woman named Isabel Cumming, and she is, it's on a federal thing." And he said,
That's amazing.
"And she is crazy.
Maryland should have saw you coming." Maryland should have. I mean, Isabel should have like a fin in the ocean. It's like, oh shit.
That was one of the proudest moments of my life because he
You
ended
should
up
have
getting
that
20
transcript.
federal. I do have.
Hell yeah.
It's framed up in your office.
Yeah, right next to the Wrath of Isabel that my detectives gave me too.
Can I just tell you, I had a client with Paul and our friend Andy White, and I co-represented with Andy, and Paul didn't invoke the man-min, and our client is deceased now, but he was wiggling, and I remember Andy yells at him one time, "You don't know who you're fucking with. Paul's going to eat you alive, and Jeremy already got him to not invoke the man-min. You already fucking won." And then the client is like, but I couldn't talk to him like that because of the age difference. But Andy, Andy, and Andy did, and he was not wrong about Paul.
Yeah. No, Paul's
And
excellent.
Paul, it's people whose names you don't get to hear about. Like everyone hears Leo Wise, and Leo's fantastic. Nothing to take away from him, but there people like Paul, and this goes back to, just to go a little bit back in the conversation. When you come out of a city state's attorney's office and you get that training like you did, coming from all these different places and building that life experience. So by the time you go to the U.S. attorney's office and you're not some like right out of Yale prosecutor, no offense, you know who I'm talking about, the life experience that you bring to that, that's how you crush predators, right? Because if you just come out of whatever school you go to and you go to the U.S. attorney's office, you have no life experience to bring with you in front of a jury. You don't really understand outside of calculating sentencing guidelines. But that's why I always brought value to people like you, people like Paul, Lorraine Everett, who's there now, Casey's husband, Jim Wallner, the people that come from the city state's attorney's office. They're fucking monsters, right?
Well,
but by the time
Andy
you get to
Smith, Marty Clark.
oh my God, Andy Smith, yeah,
Andy Smith is
fuck.
a rock.
Oh my
How about
God,
the simple fact that
I met her and I
one of my best
fangirled her. And she had no clue who I was, and she assisted on that case with Andy, and I wanted her to come in, and I was like, I just want to say that I know who you are. I heard you're really, really good at your job, and it would be a pleasure to work with you. And she's like, why are you being so fucking weird? And I was like, because I know you a monster. You're so good at your... But the opportunity to work with people, and they don't appreciate it because they don't know who the fuck... But that, once again, that's a Baltimore City thing. Like when you have these people that, I'm going to quote Rich Gibson, that have launched people into orbit. And we see that's the I want that experience. I want to be here for free to be around.
Rich
that.
came from the state's attorney's.
I know.
Civil, right?
So did Eric.
Civil people out there in the universe, or other criminal lawyers that come from a place like Yale, like trial's the easy part when you've been through Baltimore City, when you got screamed at by some judge about something that you did or didn't do that you don't even
You could
remember
take the abuse on the federal level. No,
right. You're like,
Judge Bernard just made me stand for 2 hours. He was incredibly pleasant, and the intellectual discourse is what scared me. He was very nice. It wasn't in Baltimore City where you get yelled at for no reason.
Right. I mean, in trying a case that you have no idea what, when you go in a misdemeanor jury trial and you're like, oh, we got to pick 12 on a case. I hope my witness shows up in 5 minutes.
Judge Lisa Phelps, Kurt and I first jury trial said, she was, just grab Kurt. And then Kurt and I just sat there and we learned together, and now we're partners we'll do some jail time later together. Don't worry.
Lisa's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that once again, somebody else that, just crushed predators. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's really what you're looking for. Someone that can come in and handle a case. Sorry, I interrupted. But.
No.
So when do you go to Prince George's County from the city?
It's pronounced PG, by the way.
No, it's not. We don't like it when they say that. Actually,
I'm from PG County.
The
kills
judge.
me.
Well, if you are actually from, then it's okay.
I know. No, I interviewed with Judge in Missouri.
Yes,
you better not. That's who I worked for. Him and Nichols. And Nichols was fine with it because he was from PG. But Missouri was like, it's pronounced Prince George's, and I was like, that's crazy. Aren't you from North Carolina? And that internship went really well.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I love Judge Nichols though. That was great.
What year were you at Nichols?
I was with Nichols 04-05. I was with Missouri 03-04.
I was. I probably ran into you. I mean, I was working. I was the head of police misconduct and economic crimes for Glenn Ivey. So a prosecutor, their deputy at that time was Bob Dean. Mm-hmm. Bob Dean reached out to me when I was at Baltimore City, and he said, we're starting an economic crimes unit, and Glenn Ivey really has heard that you are the person that he wants to start this unit. So I ended up, I got there, and there was 2 prosecutors. By the time I left, there was 14 prosecutors, and the Washington Post called us the shining star of his administration.
And there was nothing better than driving to Upper Marlboro.
I drove 2 hours for 14 years each way.
It's just such a pleasant drive.
Yeah.
The scenic route on 495 to 95 South.
I would actually I took the Key Bridge and I went around the backside because at that time I was living in Towson.
Oh my
That's
God.
brutal.
What?
I drove from Laurel and PG, and it was
my
brutal.
God, you call that a commute?
It was still an hour and 15 minutes. It was horrible.
Did you own an entire library of audiobooks at that time?
I did love audiobooks.
That's how she became a CFE.
I also loved my Prius. No, I became a CFE way before that. Yeah, I had for a while there. I had the triangle. I had a 6-hour triangle. I had where I was living in Towson. I had where I was working in Prince George's, and then where I was dating my husband who was living down in Solomon's Island. So I had the 6-hour triangle.
Sounds like your husband made out. It sounds like he was the only smart one there. He was like, I'm going to stay here in
Well, he
Solomon's.
was flying everywhere, So yeah, that was crazy. So commute. And then what did I do? What did I go from there? Couldn't have got any worse. No, I decided to go to Washington, D.C. to learn about that commute. Yeah.
So you go to WMATA?
Yeah.
And there's no theft and fraud there.
Oh, boy, they had some good ones there. By that point, I had been doing this a long time.
Did anyone ever steal a train? I'm just like Money Train with J-Lo and Wesley Snipes
The
and
money
Woody Harrelson.
train. We actually had a great case involving the money train. We had 2 guards that were stealing the money every night from the money train. It ended up the FBI. We did it undercover. We watched them drop the money. One of them had a lottery addiction. Yeah, so he would go every day and
That's
buy
what I
literally
want.
$120.
You want a lottery addiction?
No, it just sounds. Can you listen to how that sounds? It sounds like such bullshit.
We did one case. That
I'm addicted to the lottery.
Yeah, he was. It was a case that I asked to look at the purchase cards, what they call the P cards. I asked to look at all the list of the people's P cards in WMATA, and I was able to look at the list and point out exactly these 2 people are committing fraud, and it turned out to be a $600,000 fraud.
Because there's no, and this is like I don't want you to dive down this, but P card audits it's amazing to me.
No, it was all I had asked for. All I had asked for was the amount they were spending each month, the number of transactions, and what their average was. And so the 2 in question, I knew what the maximum we were allowed to spend at that time, which was $4,000 a transaction. They were spending $4,000 every time. They had the lowest number of transactions, and that made no sense. So it turned out that they were actually had involved a Redskin player, and they were actually doing this.
Who was the
fraud.
Redskin player?
He wasn't a good one.
Oh.
He was convicted. He went to jail. I did do.
Whoa!
You know all of them?
No, he said because he's saying they all suck. 2 of them went to UNC. You need to cool your jets there, buddy.
Well, do you know? I did one case involving. You might know this name. This was a Baltimore Raven, Orlando Brown.
Yeah, of course.
Yes. Well, Orlando Brown, Zeus they called him. That was a that was probably my most memorable case of all time, because I also didn't realize Prince George's County in Baltimore. I am so used to thinking the Ravens are the greatest thing since sliced bread, blah, blah, blah. Okay, in Prince George's, they are all about the Redskins.
And the Cowboys, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of Cowboys fans down there.
What happened was this Orlando Brown's best friend from when they were younger had actually looked at his driver's license, because in the old days, Social Security numbers were on your driver's license.
Oh.
He then called up one of the major banks and opened up a home equity loan. Okay. He then recruited one of his other best friends to be Orlando Brown and go into the bank and take out the now $125,000 that they had gotten. He went into the bank, signed autographs, took pictures.
Was he a big fella?
Oh, he was a very big fellow.
Because that's like you got to cast that role correctly
Correct.
if you're a fraudster.
It was correctly cast.
That's
okay?
awesome.
It was
I appreciate.
cast.
You got to appreciate that a little bit.
Yes, and then but that story. Okay, so then they ended up stealing it. They ended up finding out how it does. They caught him like the second time when he tried to come in again, because there happened to be 2 police officers there, and they're like, "What's the big deal? That's Orlando Brown." Because that one of them happened to know, and they're like, "No, it's not." So he ended up getting caught and everything. But this case actually changed my life, because the fake Orlando Brown, he actually flipped on my side and was going to be tested, because the real mastermind was the best friend.
By the way, the fake Orlando Brown is Forlando Brown. Orlando Brown.
Okay. Orlando Brown.
Just to make things clear for the listeners.
Okay. And so he agreed that he was going to, and I said, well, look, because the other one was in jail at the time. And I said, he's going to be getting out. Do you want protection? He goes, no. He goes, known him since the Sandlot. He said that I will, he goes, it's white collar crime. He goes, I'll be fine. I can handle myself. And I'm like, okay. So the day of trial, Orlando Brown was there. And then suddenly everybody knew who he was because like all these people were with him, and I had to take him and his attorney into a different area. But the best friend was there, and they came up to me and they said, "Your guy's not coming." I said, "My guy will be here," because he had promised me. And so he was with another guy, and they were wearing not fancy clothes, and I'm like, because every time else he had come in the dressed to the nines, and so. And it's very, very, guys will kill you guys, but it's very hard to get a postponement in Prince George's County. It's not like in Baltimore City, it's easy. Prince George is difficult, so I had to argue to the judge that my guy will be here. He, I don't know where he is, but he'll be here. And I was able to win the postponement. But right when I was winning the postponement, all of a sudden I heard someone behind me, like, put their hand into their fist like that and say, bitch. And I turned around and I'm like, whoa, in an open courtroom. And it was the guy that was with the guy, the defendant. And they left, and I go back to my office, and I get a call from Washington, D.C. that my witness had been shot between the eyes and killed. And I remember I fell to the ground, and I said, they killed him. They actually killed him. And it turned out they killed him.
Did you read the
Yes, I became a witness for the prosecution on the murder because that was why it happened.
How did they catch? They
caught him because there was a camera. They went to his garage in D.C. He was a mechanic, and you can actually see them walk up to him, and they killed him the day before trial. Shot him between the eyes. And from that moment on, I said, there's no such thing as just a white-collar crime. And so then I ended up learning what it was like to be on the witness stand and testify for that case. And, yes, they were found guilty, and they're serving 40 years in jail in Washington, D.C.
Do you know what you've done that no Gus has ever done here? You've answered all the questions that we haven't asked you. Most memorable story, funniest story. Like Kurt,
I haven't gotten to the funniest yet.
I hate to say this, Kurt, but as our former economics prosecutor, you're about to get replaced.
I don't blame you.
Like, just because this lawyer's on the rocks doesn't mean it has to be Kurt. Kurt just took a bathroom break on you. Kurt's about to go check his checkbook and be like, I don't want to go to jail. So what's the funniest one?
Oh, the funniest one had to do that prostitute. Remember? Darlene Shepard. God bless her.
That was her name?
That was her name.
Your memory is
what
fantastic.
Was her stage name? Did she have like an escort name?
No, Darlene. And the Washingtonian magazine did a whole story about her.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
They did. It was fascinating.
You don't meet a lot of Darlenes anymore.
No. And she, the case came down to the moles on the judge. And the judge had the moles removed. All right, made 4 men laugh hysterically. Yep, the moles were in places that nobody would know. Yes, and she knew.
Except for Darlene.
Darlene knew.
That's so good.
Yep.
I think I have good stories. And then we have Isabel on.
Yeah, I can. I mean, probably my. Well, I'll let you keep asking.
No, just roll. I could just listen to you. I could honestly just listen to you for fucking hours.
I have a question. So you said that your father is from Saskatchewan and your mother is from Puerto Rico. So does that
you did not have to say Canada after Saskatchewan, by the way.
Does that make you Canada Rican? Like what do you how does that happen?
South Canadian.
We are
South
very,
Canadians?
very. Oh, okay, Saskatchewan.
Do you
very, very cold.
do you play hockey and beach volleyball? Like how does that work? I'm just very confused.
Took on all the Puerto Rican. I can't stand anything cold. I like it. I'm happy sitting in a hot car. I mean, I'm always cold. I'm just freezing.
I'm happy. Said every baby of all time, right? I'm happy sitting in a hot car.
Jeez, Jeremy, what?
No, I'm joking. Isabel, one time somebody said something to you, and I don't know where it came from. That I think I don't, and maybe you could, because it was a funny story where people didn't know you were Hispanic because it wasn't something you were running around going, I'm Latina, right? And somebody had challenged you on it, and I don't remember where I read this, but you would go, you're like, just because my last name is Cumming doesn't mean I'm not Latina. And I don't remember where you said that, and it was before I had actually met you. Yeah. But it was just kind of funny to me because it's like they expect people to run around to broadcast, like to wear a T-shirt that says, by the way, I'm not, I'm Hispanic, or by the way.
I don't use my full name. My full name is Isabelita Margarita Mercedes Cumming de Lloveras. And I think that wouldn't.
Is that Puerto Rican? That sounds like
sounds
Irish or something.
What you will appreciate is our law clerk, who we have extended an offer to, Juan Mercedes, who is Dominican.
Qué bueno.
Now, Juan es lo mejor. Pero la última razón que ofreciendo un trabajo aquí es porque yeah, you didn't know I spoke Spanish. So the real reason is because what better law firm is there? Because I'm Eldridge and I'm Jewish, so I have a horrible Jewish last name, right? But if you can't have a Greenberg, Steinberg, with all our consonants, Nachman and Crandall, we're going to end with Mercedes one day.
I love it.
So we've got to get him to partner. But at that point, something and Mercedes. So, Isabel, if Juan doesn't work out,
okay.
given all of your past employments, we're going to just offer you partnership right now so that we can add you. So you're going to have to dump the Cumming. No offense. You can't be Cumming. But we're going to need Mercedes. And if you need to have all the names to make our law firm even longer, we're okay with that.
But you see...
Because you sound like a law firm already.
I do. I could be my own law firm.
Yeah, they're waiting for the other 8 of you to show up.
Mercedes was my grandmother. Isabel was my other grandmother. And that is why in the newspaper, you always see Isabel Mercedes Cumming. I have been the same name for my entire life. Isabel Mercedes. I was named after both grandmothers. I was going to be either I am coming or am I coming? Ooh, I stopped them all again.
You're so fucking good. You're so fucking good. Shantae was like, she's going to be amazing. And I was like, she's going to be good. Like, I had to drive to Wacomico at 6 a.m. Like, oh man, you are so everything that we wished for.
And that was actually
some of our guests disappoint
about
us.
My show notes. I told you not.
Your show notes sucked. Our guest is awesome.
I knew that I didn't need show notes. I knew it.
No, I'm
serious.
I
watched her give a talk like 3 weeks ago at Law Club, and she was like,
"Honestly,
I don't need show notes." I knew it.
You're fucking A+, man. I mean, everything. The problem? The problem was when I don't know if you guys remember the Jeremy Eldridge show from WBAL. Like most, I don't know if you guys remember.
I
that,
do.
Canceled.
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you, Isabel. As I quit because of Kim Klasick. Those damn Republicans. But when I had her on, you couldn't be fully you, and I knew you couldn't be fully you. But I just appreciate being. This is just all Isabel today. This is.
Yeah, well, imagine my email address in Prince George's, which was iamcoming@co.pg. And then what happened? I was spammed.
I told you.
I was spammed. And then the guys in IT, they're like, well, we have made exceptions, and we'll let you go with the your first two names, so you can be Is Cumming if you'd rather be that. And I'm like, I don't believe these rules.
And y'all think I'm inappropriate.
You're like, and now the IT guys are just fucking with me.
Oh, that's exactly what I was thinking. But then I decided, okay, let's own it.
This is what I miss about the city state's attorney's office is like, this is how we were raised.
Yes.
Like, and everyone who we work for, you put Lisa Phelps in the chair. That's what everyone is like. And then they're like, why do you care so much about rebuilding it when Marilyn was there? It's because this is what the fuck it was like. Like, this is why we were good lawyers, is when you're raised by people like you.
By wolves.
Yes. You become, but it's family. Right? It's family, and we're loyal, and people are like, defense attorneys just want Marilyn out because she's doing a good job. And it's like when defense attorneys are lobbying for another defense attorney to get in, and that defense attorney is giving up making $500,000 to make half of that, It's because we gave a shit about the office we were raised by, and because we wanted this kind of stuff that you're talking about in the courtroom, because we know what sort of predatory world we live in.
We do. And
because I don't need to tell you, economic crimes under Maryland, just to say it, went from when Haven and Haven Kodak, Deputy State's Attorney for Baltimore City, and Pat Jessamy, and you, and Casey Murphy, and Sherry Green, and Jesse Halverson, like all the people. Kurt was there. Josh, who's in Howard County now. All the
Josh
people that went through it, right?
Took over part of my
document. Everyone that went there. Greg Bernstein, everyone there. Then it got whittled down to nothing. And so when Ivan came in,
there was nothing.
There was no prosecution of white collar crime at all in a major urban city.
And you're taking people's income. You're taking what they've saved. It's a horrible crime.
Or even we say, and I know there was still a bit elder abuse, physical elder abuse that wasn't necessarily going through the felony family violence unit. That oftentimes if they were being abused physically, they were being abused financially. None of that was being done.
It was more, usually you see more financial abuse at that level. You don't necessarily see the physical. There may be some neglect, which is very difficult to prove, right? But the financial abuse, which is also very difficult to prove.
But during COVID, this was the number one time during COVID, right? During COVID, when people were stuck at home and it was easy to reach people, and fraud was
rampant
at an all-time high, right? Yep. And grabbing people's mail and everything that you could imagine, there was no one prosecuting it in Baltimore City outside of the U.S. Attorney's Office. Your office obviously investigating government fraud and waste, but for private victims. And that's why we felt strongly about hey, maybe we should look into this. And Brandis Marsh, who is a very dear friend of ours, who was there during Maryland.
He's now at the Inspector General's office.
Yes, but he was by himself.
Yeah,
he was completely by himself.
He was a unit of one.
Yeah, and that through no fault of his own. He is one of my closest friends.
If
cases
you recall,
you can't do that job by yourself.
We tried referring some cases over there. We had some victims that we had represented. And
oh my God, he had hundreds of cases on his own.
He had 150.
Yeah. So I don't want to say my point is that Maryland was not supporting him because Brandis is such a close friend of ours. But you can't fight crime. You're not Batman. Rather, Batman doesn't do white collar crime.
Batman needs to do white collar crime. That's why he had Catwoman.
God, she's good.
All right,
I'm just gonna stop talking.
So I'm gonna ask.
Does she do this to you at home? We have a guest off screen that no one can see, but is this your life?
Pretty much.
So he loves.
I feel you. My wife's the same.
I'm gonna ask
it's
some more
hard.
on-topic questions because there are a few things that we've got to get through. Most importantly, do you like spreadsheets more than Adam Crandall?
Adam's a freak in the sheets.
I love spreadsheets.
What's your favorite formula in a spreadsheet?
The
Sum
I know what
total.
the bottom line is on the fraud that I'm going to prove and win.
Yeah, I'm a pivot table kind of guy.
Ooh, that's very advanced.
It's been a while, and not so much with these guys. I have to kind of pie charts.
Pie charts are very good. People really like them. But sometimes people go overboard on pie charts.
You can do whatever.
Yeah, welcome to the club.
So, I want to talk about your 2023 annual report.
Okay.
And, not specifically, but I want to send a shout out to the listeners, friends of ours. So when Jeremy, when we were preparing for the show, and Jeremy said, the 2023 annual report is online, and I thought, I don't ever want to read an Inspector General's annual report. That sounds really boring.
No, they're awesome. What are you talking about? That AGC reports. A lot of these government reports are like my night reading.
Let him finish.
So, Isabel, this is,
Yes, ma'am.
This is fantastic, not just in its content and the substance, but I have to give you a lot of credit for, and I assume this is you. This is very readable. This is what I'm saying to the listeners. The graphics, the way it's organized,
The pictures.
It is very digestible in snippets. This is what we did. Boom, boom, boom. These are the. It's not one of these,
highbrow.
Right, like the things you see in congressional investigative.
Congressional Budget Office report for fiscal year 2023-2024.
Yeah. But when when I saw this, I was pleasantly surprised. It's only 20-some pages, but it's very accessible to...
It's written by someone who tries cases to a jury.
So that's really where I want to... Now, I know, Jeremy, we're going to dive in on some...
Did you like the mummified rat?
No, did you
So
see,
that was
Let's
that
talk
was
question
about
is-
exactly where we were
mummified
going.
rat.
did you see the coloring book that was attached to it? It was with the where
Numbers in the back.
you can actually do the mummified rat as a paint by number.
But this is a fantastic report, and I would encourage everyone who's listening to go online and find it and read it, and we can highlight some of the highlights. We can go through some of the highlights now.
Yeah, I believe 100% we work for the public. If the public won't enjoy and won't enjoy our annual report, then why the heck would I make it?
There should be
it
book
has to
clubs
be
for your
interesting.
report, like a little bit of whiskey,
Yes.
annual report.
That's what I thought.
Are you
That's
going to
what
have
we
me
were
back
here.
for my 2024? I can tell you. I can give you guys some sneak.
Isabel,
peeks.
we want you back like every other month at this point.
Do you know-
You're ranking one of the top guests right now. I don't know if you realize
next-
right
next-
now.
Spoilers for the next episode.
I am going to give you a spoiler
Yes.
right now, because when I first started, okay, there was 72 hotline complaints and $240,000 saved. Right now, we are currently at this moment at 800 complaints received and 15 million right now in savings.
That's not the
Identified
Utz chips.
this
You're not saving
year.
people Utz chips.
This year.
So
This
can-
year.
That's
can
crazy.
we talk in for a second before we dive
Okay.
in on this report? Can you talk for a second about how these cases, how do they come to you? Like, what's the
When you say hotline, yeah.
My hotline is just that. It is a telephone call or an email to our office, and I have one person. I actually have two people that work full time just answering calls. And as you can imagine, I do get a lot of calls from people that are not within my jurisdiction. We still try to help every person. And if it's something that my office doesn't usually do, 'cause I will actually write what I call a referral letter, and I will get a letter from me written to DPW saying, this is a situation, I want a response in 3 weeks. And they respond. And so sometimes, and people will write back and say, I've had this problem for so long, and thank you so much because you actually fixed this. We've had water bill situations. We've had people that had cars parked in front of their house. I mean, we will try to help anybody we can.
To Adam's question, and I don't know the answer to this. Does your office differ in mandate? So, for instance, the Office of the Inspector General in Baltimore County, Kelly's office is, and if I'm oversimplifying it by bifurcating her office, it's half sort of fraud, waste prevention, then half advisory opinion. Because she has to offer some opinions on ethics issues.
And actually, they took that away from her. She doesn't have ethics.
So
anymore.
I was not aware
I
of that.
have ethics.
So I was not aware of that.
I'm the ethics director for the city.
How do those numbers stack up for you?
Oh,
As far as because a lot goes into somebody propounds a question to you. So I thought both of you had to do that. So I appreciate you educating us. How does that stack up for you? Because those are two completely different jobs.
Right. And the numbers I gave you have nothing to do with ethics. Okay, ethics gets also like 1,000 hotlines things too, because that's a huge one. I actually have designated an ethics director whose name is Chris Amberger, and he is the ethics director for the city. So, and we have my agents will do their cases, and he does the opinions, and we also have an ethics board in the city, and they're citizen based, and they determine the ethics. I mean, the ethics group this year, we actually had, a case went all the way to court, and the judge, it was against council president who wasn't disclosing his legal defense fund.
Yes.
Yes, and
To Judge Fletcher Hill.
correct. Yep. So that was the first time, and Judge Fletcher Hill voted against the council president, or decided against.
But the names didn't end up having to be disclosed.
Correct. That was a completely different issue.
Exactly.
Correct. And that one it ended up.
That was the
but
MPIA.
that's being, yes, and that one I think is still going to be appealed. So I think it's going to keep on.
Can you give us an idea of just the sheer number of ethics calls Are you allowed to disclose?
That's that is a separate annual report, and it's actually quite good too. We actually get probably, well, we get over when we have to do those financial disclosure forms, which 3,000 employees in the city have to do.
Kurt and I used to.
Yeah, those. Then we ended up getting close to 1,400 phone calls about how to do them because it's so bad, so difficult. And we have this horrible computer system that we've been trying, and I'm still trying to get. Is it
still the same system that's been there for
it's really,
10, 12 years now? Oof.
Yeah, they did a Band-Aid one, but we're trying to get a new whole system by next year. So that's very important to me.
So I have a couple more structural questions for you. So you are not a prosecutor, right?
No, I was.
But you had or have subpoena power.
Yes, I do.
So can you explain that to the listeners and kind of explain the importance of subpoena power, and then also separate question, like when do you bring the state's attorneys in on a particular case?
Subpoena power is actually in our charter that we have the ability. It's very similar to what I believe Congress has subpoena power too, and many of them are not lawyers or prosecutors. You have the ability to subpoena any type of record as long as it pertains to the city. Following the money is usually what I do. The only thing that's different from like a grand jury subpoena, because I do a lot of financial, when we issue an inspector general subpoena, they notify the defendant that we're requesting their information, whereas in a grand jury subpoena, there's a non-disclosure.
Is that because they're financial records?
Well, it's in financial records.
Pursuant to the Maryland rules?
I don't know. I might think it might be federal.
That's what I was asking, because I know with bank records, there's some different notifications.
Exactly. So, but a grand jury, they don't have to do that.
Right. Okay.
If it's signed by a judge. So if I have a case that I believe will end up being a criminal case, then I will immediately go to either, depending what it is, either the Maryland State Prosecutor, the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office, or the U.S. Attorney's
Who has jurisdiction.
Who has jurisdiction. Yeah.
So can you describe...
Hold on, but before you go, real quick, historically, and this isn't just you, there are also situations where you may find fraud and waste. Stuff ends up in your report. It may not be public yet, but you can sit down with a public official, and public officials have resigned, right? Or people have, and I'm not talking about elected officials, but agency heads and stuff like that, where there might be stuff that's not criminal, borderline, or stuff that may be embarrassing, and people kind of go away. And that's also been the same at OSP. And I'm not asking you to name names. I would
never be the one to sit down and talk to them.
Well, and that's where I'm going with that.
Right.
But that's kind of the stuff that as defense attorneys we know about, is representing people, or prosecutors know about, where there's this weird limbo with your office and OSP.
That was kind of where I was going with that.
Where, and to me, that and having done some of that representation of that world, where maybe you don't need to be prosecuted, but maybe you need to retire.
Can you just kind of talk about that
in any way you want?
Administrative and civil and criminal, and how it kind of, how do you make a decision as to when you want to refer a case to a prosecutor's office as opposed to maybe we need to have this person
way better way to ask it? Yeah.
If it's a case that's going to end up when I believe someone should not be with the city, then what I do is I'm the fact finder. My job is to find the truth, no matter what, and no politics, no nothing. I am the truth finder, and so I then write a report to the action holder, which is not me, unless you are an elected official and have asked me to write a report. And then, of course, who is the action holder? The public, the voters. So that report would, of course,
to that one.
Would of course be issued to everybody.
Do you just poke the bear from the time you wake up?
I do have a sign above my thing that says, "Be the type of woman that when you wake up, the devil says, 'Oh crap, she's up.'"
I swear to God, she buys 93.7 ground beef. I swear, there ain't no 80-20 in that house.
Yeah. So anyway, so it's my job to tell what happened. It's other people's job to be the action holder. However, if for the city workers, I mean, what we usually issue our report to the action holder, and they have 2 or 3 weeks to get back to us. If we find out by the time it gets back to us that the person has been terminated, that becomes part of the report, and that's usually what happens. Because as soon as, because the office, because of the incredible people that I work with, and I mean, like, shout out to Matt Neal, who is my deputy. I mean, they're just, they're silent warriors, and our job is to put out the facts, and then as a result of them, as time has gone by, when an OIG report gets issued, it becomes news.
Is this your favorite job that you've had? You just seem like you love your job.
I do love my job.
I know it's hard, and you know, we're obviously close friends with Ivan. You see him, and you see Eric, and I know how hard the three of your jobs are. And you've talked about a lot of jobs here, but you really seem to love this job.
I do. I love this job. So I've worked very hard for this job.
And I don't mean to interrupt you, but
I didn't mean that to try to trap you. It's just you could hear it in your voice.
I am a passionate person.
Yes.
Speaking of the passion,
it comes from Saskatchewan.
Why?
Yeah, right.
Why is it a bad idea for someone to invite you to be passionate about your job by asking for an investigation?
Oh, fuck you.
Well, obviously, I
because elected officials have done that, right?
Yes.
Has it worked out well for them?
It's like inviting a shark to your pool, Kurt. Like, it speaks to why she got found. You don't invite a shark to your swimming pool.
Let her answer her
I
own
can't
question.
answer the question.
I'm glad the podcast went back to its roots all of a sudden.
What, did we go too far off?
We basically started this show to get Marilyn Mosby out of office.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
I don't want to go all George Bush, but mission accomplished.
I didn't know that.
It's a retro episode.
No, I have been asked to do investigations by elected officials. Most of them, it's against other people. One of them was about themselves. And so when that happened, the press actually got a letter before I did. And then when I found out that I was asked to do this, I went and talked to, at that time, the solicitor. And because that was the chairman of my board that had never met.
Was that George Neal?
No.
At that point, who was that?
It started with Andre Davis. So if you went forward, it became Andre Davis.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you came on. You're right. Andre hired you. I just, during the time was what George Neal, wasn't he city solicitor?
Before.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Before.
Okay.
Before. Now it's Ebony Thompson.
Yes.
Very good.
Who's wonderful.
Very wonderful. Yes. So I went down and I said, well, we give $35 million to the state's attorney's office. Been asked to I was asked to fully investigate 3 things, that being the travel, the businesses, and the gifts. So that's what I did. I investigated, and we did a report that came out about, and it's a very long report, and it's probably close to 100 pages because the other side ended up getting attorneys, and they asked me to publish all the letters I got from the attorneys. Some of them weren't very nice.
Because they want to be able to say something is true because they wrote it. Yeah, I've dealt with lawyers that do that.
Seriousness, though,
they write letters to me in cases, and then they attach them as exhibits as though what they say is true.
But the travel wasn't unique to her. And that's the thing, because there was also the DPW, where the head of DPW took 13 employees to Arizona, costing the city $32,000 to watch one individual receive an award. And so travel has been a long-time issue that was not unique to Marilyn Mosby. I know she called for the investigation.
The extent of the travel was the issue.
Exactly. But it was good to bring that issue to the forefront, because I don't think the public was paying attention to how much taxpayers are paying for city employees to travel to places where there was no return on investment whatsoever for the city.
And it's still happening.
100%. Well, that's why I brought the DPW thing happened way after Marilyn Mosby. And why would 13 city employees need to travel to watch someone get an award when there's no ROI on that?
Right.
I guess what saddens me is, like, your report came out, and that's one, and you've done a lot of amazing work. But the one thing that still kills me is the travel, because no one gives a shit.
Well, and that's what kind of struck me in reading through the report from last year. And we're focused, obviously, we're defense attorneys. You guys are former prosecutors, former prosecutor. And so the juicy stuff is the fraud and with the criminal element. But there seems to be a lot that's just wasteful.
Yes.
Or just incompetence. Like the folks who are, getting paid more. The check got routed to the wrong person, right? Or whatever the case might be. And
That cost us $50,000.
As a city resident myself, that's the kind of stuff that I think. I mean, the fraud and the criminal element gets the headlines, but it's that kind of stuff you don't hear about. But it seems to be where, like, the real money, taxpayer money, is. Your office can bring that money back.
Yeah, water bills. Yeah,
Water bills. We actually did a joint investigation with Kelly Madigan. Procurement is a huge issue. We now finally have a new procurement person. They're finally starting to really change the procurement system, but we do not still have a change order policy. Change order is where they make all their money. Right. And that is so.
Can you explain what that is? Because a lot of people, I don't think, understand that's a game that's played.
That's a construction business game, baby.
Yeah, 100%.
Construction and other things. So what happens is I bid that I can do your project for $1.2 million.
And you bid low on purpose.
You win low on purpose. And then suddenly you win. And suddenly you have to put a change order in for $500,000 because this changed. This happened, I think, on the parking case. And then another change order for another $200,000. And then you end up being far over the next highest bidder who may or may not have done the same thing. So, I mean, but to know that this happens over and over again and we haven't issued a policy.
Were you the ambulance? You were the ambulance company as well, weren't you?
I sure was.
Yeah, that was exactly what they did, right?
Exactly what
they
did.
bid low, and then they come back and go, we need another 1.2 million, and it's just.
And it was just a fraud. It's just, and so.
Well, if people know that that's how the game is played.
We need
then
to
they
change
play,
the
well,
game.
but that's the problem.
Game. Yeah, it's institutional fraud at that point.
But
And
that's
it's
what
not,
I brought up to Maryland
though,
Travel is to Maryland. She's like, hey, like, and I'm not. It's not a
city
defense to
agencies
her,
do it.
but
Right.
when we frequently allow your reports to come out, and you're not going to meet any. There's no average citizen I've met or other lawyer that goes, oh man, yeah, this sounds great. Isabel knows my wife. My wife worked in city government for almost 20 years. Most of the city employees, if you say that to them, are like, yeah, that's fucked up. But when when the city council is responsible for changing the policy and they never change the policy because they're the ones violating it, that's the same reason why Isabel shouldn't be
reporting to them.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole problem, right?
And to Maryland's travel was not paid for by the city, most of it. She was just traveling based on different groups were wanting
We're inviting her.
Exactly.
She was just gone 222 days out of a 365-day year, including
it was a
weekends
lot.
and leap years. It was the leap year. That's what the issue was. It was February. February was the problem.
And then she amended. The whole thing happened because she amended her ethics report and she included the three businesses. And first story was originally about the travel, but then amending and adding the businesses once she realized that they were looking at the travel and they were looking at her ethics reports. She realized that she didn't list the new businesses. And then the next big story came, the businesses.
I never understood, and you don't have to ask this because this has been Kurt and I's question, how part of your report, and I may not get the numbers exactly right, and I know you're a numbers person, but that I know one of the companies was used as a tax shelter, essentially, for that Marilyn would get invited to go to a conference and someone would pay for her, and then Nick would accompany her, but then the travel would be written off under her company. Was that ever made part of the federal prosecution? Because that was one of the stories that I always found to be a powerful example of like, hey, this is a fake business, but then I never heard, but I didn't get to attend the trial, but that was something that was popular under your report, but you didn't really hear much about afterwards.
It actually wasn't that popular with my report. The focus of my report turned out to be.
I mean, it was popular to me.
It was popular to you.
with my whiskey in your report in the fire.
The media was really focused on the Board of Estimates thing, which I think Tom Hall actually correctly pointed out that was not really the huge issue, because all she had to do was put in a retro letter to get the approval. But the tax issue was part of the questioning of her husband on the stand.
Okay.
And that became it was in the newspapers and everything. So that type of questioning.
Because that to me was just the most obvious when people were saying, "Oh no, she said it was a legitimate business, and she had Shalonda Stokes testify that she said this and that and other to her," which I don't know how that inadmissible hearsay was admitted, because it's not the statement of a party opponent. But either way, what always stuck out to me was once you're writing off your husband's travel under this company, that was all. And you're the one that pointed that out to me, Kurt, because I'm sitting there. You're like, I don't want to go to jail for that.
So we are, as I said, Isabel would be a good guest and would burn through all of it without even touching some of the material that we had to ask her questions on. I do want to touch on your son's.
You haven't even flipped a page, dude.
Haven't even flipped a page. I'm literally on page 1 of my show notes.
Do you want to kill us yet, Gideon? Do you want to do a second drink review for the whiskey that we poured?
So we've got to do we have to do two things. We have to talk about your son's nonprofit, number 1. And number 2, we've got to do the drink review.
Okay.
and probably in that order.
Yeah,
so
the White Zin whiskey.
Can you talk a little bit about your son, what your son does for the city of Baltimore, the citizens of Baltimore, and also the youth of Baltimore?
Yeah. My youngest son, Joey, he actually, I laugh because, people are, because I have like a Twitter thing. I take pictures, and people are like, oh my God.
Twitter, you mean like an account on Twitter?
I do.
Okay.
And I take pictures.
It's a thing.
It's a thing. Yes. And so I laugh because my son is actually, he's by far the most famous person in our family, because he became famous when he was 7 years old. He was on the Do Tour at 7. He is a skateboarder, and he threw at the age of 7 this 540 backflip on a 14-foot vert ramp. And so he was asked to go onto the Do Tour. And at the time, I was a single mom.
So he's a professional skateboarder.
He is.
Okay.
He's a professional skateboarder. And he...
Yeah, how easily she said that.
Yeah. He actually became a professional here in Baltimore at Charm City Skate Park on O'Donnell Street. Mike Vallely, who's a very famous skateboarder, he made Joey pro back then. And since then, since Joey did become well-known at the age of 7, he really has always wanted to help the kids of Baltimore realize how awesome skateboarding is. And so at that point, when I wasn't even the Inspector General of Baltimore at all. I was working at WMATA, and I was contacted. Baltimore, we all keep our elementary school friends. So my friend, and she said that there's this wonderful family in Riverside who lost their son to a distracted driver, and they're starting a new skate park called Jake's Skate Park. And so Joe, I said, your son's pretty well known. Do you think he might want to help? And so we ended up having this huge event, and they ended up raising $40,000 for the Inner Harbor Skate Park called Jake's Park. And it ended up getting built. It's an amazing park. It was built, and Joey then ended up jumping over the mayor. I do mean flying over the mayor at the grand opening.
I'm looking at a picture.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
And since that time, he has 200.
It's become an iconic photo in Baltimore.
My son has 200,000 followers on Instagram.
Which is weird because you have more.
No, I have 1,000. What are you talking about?
I was trying to help you.
No, it's Twitter that's my biggest
Take the
follower.
damn help, Isabel.
No. He's worked very, very hard. And so he started something at the park called Breakfast and Boards, where he gives free skate lessons to the kids of Baltimore on the second Saturdays of the month. And
Still to this day.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, tomorrow is the big kickoff. It's called Jake's Day, and it's at the Inner Harbor. And we have over 130 kids of Baltimore registered for this. They get free T-shirts. They get ice cream. They get lessons. It's really special. But so many kids, during the month, these kids would come and they wouldn't have skateboards, they wouldn't have helmets, they wouldn't have anything, and he would always give them his own stuff. And so he wanted to form a nonprofit called Be More Skate Youth Project, starting with breakfast and boards, and he's now developing other programs for kids, because if you do look at his Instagram, he's his own editor, and he's very talented at photography and videography. And his one video on YouTube called The Dream has over 800,000 views. It's phenomenal. That's the video he went pro on. He made another video called The Reality about West Baltimore and about the great skaters of Baltimore, because Baltimore has some great skaters. And so then he wanted to form this nonprofit, and he's then made this other thing called Skate and Create, and he's actually taking the second floor of Charm City Skate Park, and he's making like an incubator for children where they can learn skateboarding, videography, editing, fashion design, and photography. Because Joey, in that time, also started his own clothing company called Jet Brand, and he's already had a show at the Smithsonian Institute that was on HBO, and then he actually has an event tomorrow at National Harbor in the evening, and so he wants because he said he has the ability to talk to children, and children really listen to him, so he wants to give kids the skills, because he may not, some kids aren't great at school and everything, and they're more creative. He's a very creative person because he had dyslexia. So it's just his way of really giving back and trying to, and I've watched, I mean, it's amazing, his ability to
It's
talk
a
with
very
kids.
cool clothing line. Can you raise your right hand for a second? Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I just want to make sure, did there come a time where Shantae Eldridge purchased some clothing from your son from the Jet Brand,
Yes.
and part of the proceeds, in fact, a lot of them go to charity.
Yes.
To that charity, to the nonprofit.
So he can
exactly.
buy the boards for the kids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there came a time where Shantae Eldridge purchased some of those items.
She sure
And
did
in
for
fact,
his
you
beautiful
volunteer for your
daughter.
son's charity,
Mhm.
and you packed an extra beanie
I did. The
for
spider
Jeremy Eldridge to Spider.
for Jeremy. I even wrote.
I just
for
want to make sure,
Jeremy.
and because you even wrote for Jeremy, and I just want to make sure, because you're under oath here, and because you're a believer in prosecuting fraud and waste and deceit, marital deceit, that you're aware that my 11-year-old stole this beanie from me.
Your 11-year-old has exquisite taste.
So I'm thinking, I guess the law firm should just buy some new gear and contribute to the nonprofit, huh?
Probably.
So what can people do to? So we have probably not a lot of skateboarders that are listeners, but probably a lot of judges and lawyers that are listeners.
A lot of lawyers that want to wear skatewear.
That's true too.
I wear it. It's actually very cool. They're very cool sweatshirts.
We know you're cool, Isabel.
No,
Jeez.
What can people do to
I
help?
was the biggest nerd in the world. Just if they go actually to www.joeyjet.com, and there's 2 T's in jet, and you can actually see the nonprofit on there, and you can. He has a donation, or you could buy some clothes too. Buy some clothes for the Be More.
And are there any events coming up that people can
Yes.
go to?
There's one. It'll probably be happening. There was one April 20th, but then we're having the grand opening of Skate and Create on O'Donnell Street. It's 4401 O'Donnell Street. It's on Charm City Skate Park, and that's where they're going to have Skate and Create. And May 5th is the grand opening, and there he's going to have classes for children on learning how to do all the different type of things. And it's for kids 12 and under. And it's really very unique because it's not about just skating at all. It's creating. And the kids learn how to design their own T-shirts and stuff, and how to edit video. 'Cause some kids don't want to skate, but they like that to be able to film
atmosphere.
and stuff. There's just a lot to it. Skateboarding, actually, it's just such a cool sport because you will only get good if you practice. Every video you see, he's practiced it 300 times, and you're only going to get good if you get back up when you fall. And that is life lessons, So I mean, that's what he's done. I've never seen someone work as hard as him. Just
You're
make
the
things
proud
happen.
mom.
I am. Yeah.
Proud mom. It's wonderful. It's beautiful.
Gideon's speechless.
Oh, come
That's awesome, man.
on. Oh, he's a good kid. And what was your other thing you wanted to end? Oh, we got to taste more stuff. Here, I'll give you one.
Give this.
She brought you a pamphlet.
Brought all
I do
your
have a
pamphlets.
pamphlet.
I did not just bring
You know?
one.
Do you know how I know you're a nerd?
I am a total nerd.
Do you know how I know you're a nerd?
Because I have pamphlets.
Because you brought pamphlets. Like you were very cool until you pulled out the pamphlets.
I have the Office of the Inspector General.
You
pamphlet.
are a badass prosecutor.
Yep.
You have a badass son. You have a cool ass husband.
Very cool.
But then you're
I'm a
like,
nerd.
guys, they have pamphlets.
My
Just
first
in
date
case.
was in college.
Just
I
in
am
case.
an utter nerd. I was a gymnast. I just practiced 3 hours every day, and I was happy.
All I think about is the movie Thor Ragnarok, where, you got to have enough pamphlets if you're going to have a revolution.
I just want to see, you're 100% right. I just want to see like Isabel crush you in trial. I know we're like done at that. Not that I want to lose for the firm or anything, but like Isabel's like, I just love putting together complicated prosecutions.
You know what, Jeremy?
That's like,
You know what?
you two over there
You know what
are
it sounds
made
like?
for each
You know
other.
what it sounds
He would
like?
plea it out.
Sounds like a plea.
I was going to say,
Where-
he would plea it out.
Where 150 people show up at sentencing and you and I just sit there and bang our heads on the
I don't know what
table.
you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about.
That never happened.
Yeah, no.
Which
He only
case?
stole 19 kids' scholarships. I have no idea what you're talking about.
We'll tell you off the record.
Wow. I had one.
Which is obviously the name of our other podcast.
off the record.
Yeah, it's super weird. It's not very listened to. It's on OnlyFans.
Do we want to do a drink review, Gideon? Or have
We've
we
done
Is
Bardstown
it done?
3 times. This is our favorite. Some of our favorite
Okay.
whiskey.
Okay.
We need Gideon to weigh in.
Well, after the White Zinfandel,
Roy opens up your palate.
we decided to open a bottle of the Bardstown Fusion Series. And I happened to look at this one. It is all Kentucky
any.
whiskeys blended in this particular bottle. And, Bardstown continues to not disappoint. This is one of those whiskeys that it is complex. It's got a lot of flavor. It lasts long on the palate. It finishes long.
By the way, that was me, not Isabel.
People who drink White Zinfandel have no idea how strong it's going to be.
Isabel just had a stroke.
I just smelled it.
She just
smelled it.
You didn't
seized.
even drink it.
She just seized.
Smelled it.
Her hair changed color.
Oh my God.
You're like a hypercolor T-shirt. Are you
If-
blushing?
If that doesn't tell you how good it is right there.
Why do you sound like a defendant testifying? You have like
You're
a
on the
different
wrong
voice,
show.
right? She's like, oh, sitting up straight now.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you sound like you. Do
Well,
you have an alibi?
I gotta try this. I've never had something that smelled like that.
Are you going? Did you make a reservation to go here in 3 weeks?
No, we did not.
You made a mistake then. I didn't get to go there, but you should.
I thought they're not. I am going. Shantae and I made the mistake of buying tickets at the Bourbon and Bow Ties for the Kentucky Derby.
Ooh.
Yes, and tickets we still don't have yet, but we have a hotel room and a flight, so we'll find out if we have the tickets
I
soon.
hope it's not a fraud. Let me know if it is.
She can call someone in Kentucky to help
She's
you
gonna
out.
eat them alive. Auction.com. Oh, don't give me that face.
I've done auction cases.
Oh,
don't bless.
Scheiße.
Yeah, I hope it's.
We should
I
wrap.
hope-
We
I'm-
should wrap it up. All
Are
right.
we gonna try this thing?
Are you
We've
going to
been-
try this thing? We've been lawyers on the rocks.
Oh, you've been
Abogados
drinking- you've
de
been
las
drinking
piedras.
this?
Yes, estamos bebiendo. Yeah, claro.
Ay, Dios mío.
Yeah,
All right, I'll
claro.
try this thing.
El odor.
Oh,
Oh, that was college girl face. Ooh, that was graduate school face.
And-
Here's her MBA. There's her doctorate, and there's her GED.
oh my God.
And on that note, thanks for joining us on this episode of Lawyers on the Rocks. We hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed making.
And coughing.
Until the next time, thank you very much to Isabel Cumming for joining us on this episode.
Tried to kill
Sit
me
back,
at the
relax,
end.
pour yourself a drink. Until the next episode of Lawyers on the Rocks.